Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Of course, always dependent on where you are in this wonderful world of ours. Welcome to Grizz Khan TV, where we are all about the pre-match hype about Inter Milan versus Liverpool FC. The real part of the Champions League is upon us. We've just witnessed an amazing last-minute goal for Mbappe, for PSG, I should say, scored by Mbappe, which sets it up nicely, I guess, for the second leg. We also saw a boring, absolute boring 5-0 drubbing, which we expected from Man City and Sporting Lisbon. But we're here to discuss probably one of the ties, the glamour ties of the round, and that's Inter Milan versus Liverpool. And it meant two things. It meant I brought out my new microphone. So if you haven't noticed, please notice and comment, like the stream just for my microphone because it's worth it. I hope so. Anyway, I paid a lot of money for it. But the second part of being this stage of the Champions League is having a tremendously knowledgeable panel that can enlighten us and give us insight. So I couldn't get Avi, so I got Keith with me. Keith, how are you, my friend? How are you feeling?
I'm great. I'm really good, thank you. Kind of nice you wheeled me out for this one because this tie has a personal touch to it.
Okay.
Give a shout out to my auntie's partner, Fabio Desari, who played in the Inter youth team, shared a room with Dennis Bergkamp, and was actually on the pitch when Inter won the 94, I believe it was 94, was it? UEFA Cup at the time. He's got a
Amazing.
picture there. Yeah, I spent in September. I was there at my auntie's house, and his dad was showing me pictures of his son playing for Inter. He was born and raised in Terracina, and Terracina is like just outside of Rome, so it's quite a big travel. So he told me about his days going up there playing for Inter. I didn't get many games, but he made one comment which was one of the best things I've ever heard. He goes, when I was on the he came up the same time as Totti, right? So Totti was on the Roma side, Roma Inter, and they were both on the bench. And he said, I was just so happy to be there. I couldn't believe I was there. I was on the side. I was in the San Siro, like it was amazing. And Francesco Totti, at the same age, was pissed off that he was on the bench, and that's why he says Totti became the man that he did, and he ended up having a career in Serie B. So yeah, this little story there. for the followers. So
Amazing.
This one's personal.
Amazing. This one's personal. I like the sound of that. I think I chose the right guy from the Red Fellas to join me. Also to assist me in case we get outnumbered in, it's an away game. So we need as much support as we can. I've got soccer guard himself, Ivan, in the building. Ivan?
Feeling very good. And you're right, Grizz. Ratios are important. Equal numbers are important. We can't get caught on the counter here. It's important to have a certain amount of representation. And the mic sounds great, by the way. It looks very cool as well.
Thank you very much. I can always rely on you to speak about my mic and all good things, positive. We've got Ewan joining us for the very first time. So hopefully everyone be nice to Ewan in the comments and the chat. Who's a journalist for, I need to say this properly, Sempre Intercom. Sempre Intercom. There you go. Very, very nice of you to join us to speak all things into, my friend. You're very welcome.
No, thank you very much for having me. Looking forward to it. There's no expensive mic at my end, but hopefully nobody minds.
Exactly. And we've got the neutralizer himself, the man who claims he doesn't support a club team per se, but knows a hell of a lot about a lot of club teams. Welcome back to the channel, Alex, Mr. Euro expert himself.
Thank you very much for having me back on. It's spot on and neutral. I don't know if you can see, I've got red behind me and a blue blind to the right. So I'm perfectly set up to discuss this type. But yeah, it's great to be back on.
Brilliant. And you'll notice that we're such a friendly channel here. You've noticed the background is blue. It's all about Inter because it's your home leg. Have you noticed that? The blue color and everything. I thought just small things like this matter because we're very hospitable here. But listen, we're going to come to you straight away. And obviously, we've welcomed you to the channel, and we must also welcome back Inter Milan. We must welcome back Inter Milan into the Champions League after 10 years. I mean, obviously, you've qualified through the qualifying rounds. Talk to us. Give us a brief overview, sort of your last appearance in the Champions League and sort of the journey the club's been on in the sort of the last 10 years, I guess. And how do you see you guys right now?
So since that final in what would have been 2010 with Mourinho in the treble-winning season, where obviously everyone remembers Diego Milito scoring those 2 goals against Bayern Munich, there's been nothing in Europe to shout about whatsoever. There's been nothing since that. And obviously it's a club of such magnitude, and it still holds that feeling in every football fan, but everyone's fully aware that they've not been a team that scares you for a long time. And then obviously they've now had a couple of seasons back in the Champions League, but have not managed to get through to the round 16. It had become a bit of a hoodoo sort of thing, even with a coach like Conte coming in and the team being very, very good. They still somehow didn't get through to the round of 16, despite it would have been last season. It all gets confusing now with the COVID breakup season and stuff. But the group with Real Madrid, Mönchengladbach and Shakhtar, where for periods of time and particularly patches within games, they just looked destined to go through. Not necessarily top of the group, but they certainly should have been qualifying. Somehow didn't manage it. Even this time, the first 2 games they'd lost a game and then drawn with Shakhtar. And with Sheriff winning those first 2 games, it was like, oh my God, they're actually going to do it again. Even with a team like Sheriff Tiraspol that a lot of people hadn't heard of, and a Shakhtar team that aren't as good as previous Shakhtar teams. But in the end, they managed it. And, we'll touch on it a bit more later on. But part of why that's so important is the financial side of it. They're not in a good way like that. And qualifying for the round of 16, from here this season, the only way is up in the Champions League. If they get through here, that's amazing. If they don't, what mattered was getting there in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say it was sort of the mission, I guess, was to first and foremost reach the Champions League, qualify from the group, and then this is probably. I mean, in Simeone and Inzaghi alluded to it. It's probably the worst tie, one of the worst ties that you could have got in terms of facing us. And Keith, we often speak about, don't we, that Liverpool are just, it is what it is. We're one of the most horrible teams to play against. And sometimes it's not stated enough from a domestic point of view. We often speak about sort of our flowing football and our counter-attacking play, but we're actually very, very nasty. I always use that word when we're on it. We're a very difficult team to play against, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. I think cup scenarios suit this type of team the best, because ultimately, I mean, if we were to flip this on its head and it was a Super League match, right? Remember, that was not too far behind. Then you could argue that Inter could play for a draw, right? In both legs, really. If it was a league scenario, get the point, get out of there, deal with Liverpool like that. But because it's a knockout scenario, it requires the other team to come out. It requires the other team to take risks, commit, and ultimately try and win the football match. And now with the away goal completely wiped out, that turns this whole match into there's even more bigger stakes at hand, really, because ultimately both teams will have to. They can't just get by draws, if that makes sense, or try and push it to penalties. They both have to win, and that's why I think we're so good in the Champions League. It's because teams can't do what they can do. Like in the group stages, you'll see Liverpool have lost football matches in the group stages in the past. Not this year, but in previous year, even the year we won the Champions League, we went to Russia, I believe it was, or Ukraine, and lost, because teams are quite happy to adopt a more direct approach and block us out and sit deeper. So what a proposition against Liverpool in knockout football is one of the most daunting propositions, I think, for any football team, not just Inter. I think any team in world football, and I put PSG, Bayern Munich in that scenario as well. This is a big proposition for Inter to win. Big.
What adds to that as well, I was reading La Gazzetta dello Sport, which is Italy's main sports paper, this morning, previewing this Liverpool game. I found it quite interesting. They even wrote, their journalist wrote, Inter have the nearly impossible task of playing Liverpool. So I thought that's quite an interesting thing that plays into your hands.
Yeah, Alex, I was going to actually get your opinion on this. I mean, they've asked my opinion, but I want to get your opinion on it. Grizz, what's your opinion on away goals being abolished? And in your opinion, Alex, would that affect the game plan of Inter in any way, shape, or form, do you think?
Possibly, I guess. I think we'll have to see how it goes with Inter are at home at the first leg, right? Maybe it'll probably depend on that one, how they go in the first leg. Because for people who didn't watch PSG Madrid tonight, Madrid knew they had no incentive to get an away goal. So they just sat back and soaked it all up. Obviously, Liverpool will go to Inter and say we need to score because I don't think they'll. In fairness, then again, you don't need an away goal. So maybe this is why people are feeling a bit grieved about it online. Even Liverpool, who go into tomorrow, you still don't need to score an away goal because you can probably crush it at Anfield. Yeah, mixed issue.
Ivan, I'm going to come to you and say, so we'll come to you and ask them sort of in terms of how they approach this. But from a Liverpool fan point of view, how do we approach this? Or is it fair to say that Klopp and his teams, especially in recent times, only have one way of approaching it, and that's go out to win every single game they play, whether it's home or away, whether there's away goals involved or not?
Yeah, absolutely. Klopp is actually one of the most pragmatic coaches in the world. And I love to remind people that pragmatic doesn't mean defensive football. It just means stubborn football. And if we know anything about Klopp, he's very stubborn with his selections. He's stubborn with his transfer philosophy, and he's absolutely stubborn about the way Liverpool approach football games. Marcelo Bielsa paid Liverpool a compliment last season when he said that the biggest compliment you could pay Liverpool is that they play every game the exact same way. And some people took that as a bit of a condescending remark, but I thought it was a glowing compliment that you could pay to a club. So yeah, I think Liverpool will go for the throat. The away goal thing is a bit curious, but you just said it yourself, Grizz. We kind of approach, the every game the same way. So with or without the away goal rule being there, I think Liverpool go for the throat and obviously fancy themselves as the better team. So yeah, I think we'll try to pen them in, stifle the crowd's atmosphere a little bit. But the lack of away goal might see us conserving our energy a little bit going into the second half. It'll be curious to see how it plays out. But in most ways, Grizz, I think it should play out how we expect it to.
Ewan, coming back to you, Evan touches upon sort of trying to drown out the crowd. I believe there's only 50% capacity tomorrow. Is that right? Would that probably have an influence? I mean, obviously, it will definitely have an influence, sort of in terms of the atmosphere, because the San Siro, a packed out San Siro on a Champions League night it's as historic and nostalgic as any other ground, as any other ground in European football. Will that have any bearing in terms of how Simeone and Inzaghi sets up the team? And what I mean by that is sort of sometimes when there's an emotional, packed out crowd, it can kind of just make the team just pure attack, even when the situation doesn't ask for it to. Sometimes overload players when sometimes the game scenario doesn't ask for it to. So basically what I'm trying to get at is Simeone Inzaghi, from his time there, how does he set up in a game like this, in your opinion? Because Evans described sort of the way Klopp sets up in pretty much every game. Simeone Inzaghi, this is a bit of an unknown territory for him, would you say, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say, is that we've not seen him as an Inter coach face a team on paper as good as Liverpool. There isn't one in Serie A, a team as dangerous going forward. In terms of the crowd thing, there's 50% so that they reckon there'll be about 37,000 fans there. So it's by no means nothing, but I was there in January and it was about the same amount. And it doesn't feel like a proper football stadium. It was decent, but it wasn't proper, and it wasn't like it'll be at Anfield in the return leg. But I'd imagine that we're talking about a level of football here where that doesn't really affect the players or the coaches and how they go about the game. I don't think it really changes it for them. I think the way that Inter will probably approach this game, given the lack of away goals, is I think it'll make them more attacking. They're an attacking team anyway, but like I say, they've not played a team as dangerous as Liverpool yet under Simone Inzaghi. But I just think they're going to have to fight fire with fire. Really, they've got firepower, and I think they'll see it as, we'll fly at them and see what we can get. If they lose 1-0 or draw 1-1, something like that, that's by no means a bad result. You can still do something in a one-off game at Anfield if by chance Liverpool don't show up, which almost certainly won't happen. But you live in hope. So I don't think they'll sit in a way that a lot of teams do when Liverpool come to face them in Europe. I think I'm not keen on the away goals being gone, but I think in this instance with this particular game, it might actually make it a better game because it removes a level of risk for Inter.
Absolutely. So he reminds me, and thank you, it's Simone Inzaghi, not Simeone, like Diego. Apologies, I told you my pronunciations may go a bit haywire, but I'm always here to be corrected. Keith, I know you're a massive, huge fan of Serie A, especially this season. It's had its low points, hasn't it? We went through the doldrums in terms of sort of the stereotype of Italian football being dour, boring, defensive, etc. It's gone mad, hasn't it? You've spoken about it even before we drew Inter. You spoke about Italian football like you always sort of watching random Italian games from a WhatsApp group. Has Inter been the most impressive team for you this season, or sort of obviously? I think they're a point behind AC Milan. Is that right, Ewan?
Yeah, I think it's a point now. Yeah.
So they've got a game in hand.
They've got a game in hand.
Yeah.
So look, Keith, you being the football man that you are, who has been the impressive team for you, and how much do you rate Inter on that level then?
So I just think Serie A is wild. It's just a wild league. It's there is an old saying that Italian football is defensive and everybody was kind of like it was all about defending. There is no defending in Serie A this season. I mean, I've seen the most craziest game of football, and if anyone's not watched it in the chat who's watching, Roma versus Juventus, I thought that was absolutely ridiculous when Roma. Well, they're like 3-1 up, lose the game. No, is it 3-1 up? I think it was, and lose the game 4-3, and then they miss a penalty, and then it's just
that sounds like the old Liverpool Newcastle encounters.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Yeah,
it feels like old Premier League days, if I'm honest with you. So maybe it's a great way to keep viewers, you know what I mean, like watching random football matches like I have. And in Inter. First of all, Inter scored a lot of great goals. Wow, they have scored a lot of great goals in the last few games. Like Sanchez scored a brilliant 30-yarder screamer top bins. I think it was Bastoni who just took another one where who was it against? Bastoni scored against Lazio, where it was just like hitting low and hard and bottom corner. Like there's just been some incredible goals. And Inter have impressed me in terms of their firepower. And I actually think it's probably one of the biggest dangers for Liverpool. I think Inter are very good in wide areas. I think, Edin Dzeko has taken his Serie A goal scoring run from Roma and slotted in quite nicely with Inter. And I actually think, you might tell me a bit different, but there seems to be a little bit more variety since Lukaku's gone. And now you've got Dzeko, you've got Sanchez, you've got Martinez, you've got a lot of different forwards that are contributing to the play. But the one thing that I have also noticed is as quick as Inter can score great goals, they can also let games completely slip them by. And if Liverpool fans want any hope of what could potentially happen, that Milan game for me is a big red herring, in my opinion. I think Inter have the ability to let games go and let them slip by, and there's always an opportunity to score against Inter. And I think that's why this makes it probably one of the most exciting ties of the round. But, if Liverpool kind of click into the type of gear that they're currently in, this kind of really evil, we're just going to score 1-2 goals and see the game out comfortably in the back, then there's a lot of chances to be had against Inter. There's a lot of chances. There's a lot of goals that can be scored, but by Inter, but there's a lot of chances to be had, and I think that just sums up the Serie A in general. So yeah, just hearing that they're going to come out and kind of go for it and take the game to us would not surprise me at all. And don't be surprised if there's going to be loads of goals should the Liverpool high line decide to malfunction tomorrow.
Alex, so Keith has sort of hyped up this game to be absolutely end-to-end, both managers wanting to win this particular leg, and he's spoken about sort of some of the strengths and weaknesses of this Inter team. From what you've seen of this Inter team, if you had your Liverpool if you was a scout for Liverpool or a sort of head of analysis for Liverpool, where would you first and foremost look sort of to target this particular Inter team or squad?
That's a good question. I mean, they're a very well-rounded team, so it's a hard one where to target. I know where it's in mind, but I'll leave that for a second because I was watching Liverpool fans yesterday. I think maybe we could target them set pieces. It's a good point to mention that Inter probably the best set piece team in all of Italy, not just scoring them. I think they've got the most goal-creating actions from set pieces. A lot of that is down to Çalhanoğlu's ridiculously good delivery, how he gets it really high to then suddenly dip at the last second onto someone's head. But also they faced the least goal-creating actions from set pieces as well in Italy. So I think Liverpool might find it tough to create there. I think the defence is generally well-rounded, but I think the one player you could target potentially is the right-hand side. Now, I say as well, Ewan would have watched more Inter Milan than me this season, being a good fan that he is. So I'd be interested to hear his thoughts on this. But I think Skriniar, he's gonna be tested in this game. When I've watched him, I think on the ball he always takes an extra touch or an extra couple of seconds before making his mind up, before making a pass. And at the same time, I have seen him sort of backing his way out of trouble. I think he's got that in his locker. Personally, I think if you're a Liverpool team and you're going to press this Inter Milan side, you put under pressure, a team that's really good at playing out under pressure generally, I'd look at Skriniar and think, target him, get close to him, and you could potentially force him into giving the ball away at least.
Evan, I'm going to come to Ewan about his thoughts on that. But if you was the head of analysis for Inter Milan, where would you look to target this Liverpool team? Because look, there's absolutely zero team that's infallible. Every team has its weaknesses, and the Italian media and Inter management may be speaking in press conferences and saying, "Oh, this is hope," but look, they're an absolute outfit that deservedly is in the Champions League, and they will 100% think they can win tomorrow, and they will need a lead, in my opinion, going into Anfield. I know it's the most obvious thing, but they will need a form of a lead. How would you go about sort of reporting back to Jurgen Klopp and saying, this is where I would look to?
Sorry, am I head of analysis at Inter or Liverpool? Just to clarify.
For Inter. For
Inter, okay. I'm glad you asked me that question because I've been doing some research on Inter because I obviously do not watch nearly as much Inter as you and perhaps even probably Keith. Keith's a big Serie A guy. I struggle to see where they can hurt Liverpool, if I'm being completely honest. I don't want this to come across as overconfident or anything like that. I'm just sort of looking at the numbers. Inter are not a huge dribbling team. They don't really have players. Just look on the numbers. They don't have a very good succession rate for beating their man. They are definitely not a team that pressures the opposition. They are joint bottom in the Serie A in that respect for completed pressures and successful pressing. They are not a distance shooting team, which feels weird to say because they score a lot of incredible goals. I just have off the top of my head, I can think of some great goals that have showed up on my timeline. They're not big on a long passing. They're not like Burnley in the sense that they're just going to hoof it into the wind and hope it drops right behind the line, as we saw Sean Dyche's team do the other day. One thing I did notice from the numbers, they heavily favor outswinging corners, kind of like Liverpool do. We're a big advocate of that. The numbers have showed us, for whatever reason, that's the best way to do a corner, and maybe they've recognized that too. So with them not being a big pressing team, not being a big isolation winger team, or like a long ball team, I'm wondering where they hurt us, because when I think of ways that Liverpool have been hurt in the past and in this season, I think of them sticking their fastest, paciest winger on Trent, like, Zaha style, just give it to Zaha and have him run at Trent like 5 times. I think of, the Sean Dyche approach of, hoofing it up, trying to get the ball to drop right in a certain spot. And I think of maybe how Arteta approached it, where Arsenal for the first 45 minutes at Anfield gave us a really tough time with their pressing. They physically matched us. And the numbers don't show that Inter those types of teams at all. So I would be surprised, to be honest, if they came at us. I know Keith has billed this one as an end-to-end classic, but I think Inter are asking for trouble if they do. But again, this is me looking at numbers. You guys have the eye test to go off of. I'm just a guy.
I was going to say, I think the pressures might be shifted by their possession numbers, because Inter have got a lot more possession this season. I think the pressure's been sort of shifted. Like, I think if you adjust it, I did it a few weeks ago. I think I was looking at this for an article on Torino. I think Inter are a bit more in the top 10 for pressures. I do think they tend to come onto them. So I'm not sure it'll be end to end, but I do think they are quite a good pressing team.
You have to caveat all these stats by remembering that they're probably the best team in the league. So they might mimic Liverpool's numbers in a lot of ways.
Guys, I don't know about you, but I think if I was in charge of Inter and Evan came back with that report, he would be sacked. Like, he has given me absolutely nothing that I can work with. As Simone Inzaghi, I'd be crapping myself and saying my chief analysis guy has come back with absolutely nothing. And it's surely not as dull as that, as dire as that. Your chances, there must be a chance. I want you to sort of describe the change in sort of style of play from Conte to the Inzaghi era, the transition in terms of playing style, maybe touch upon a couple of key personnel that have changed, obviously the Lukaku scenario, and then Hakimi, absolutely 2 vital components in the Conte system, and enabled him to sort of romp the league, really, wasn't it? Sort of, how has Simone Inzaghi changed the playing style in any way? And like Alex says, you're more of a possession-based team now. Is it fair to say you are more of a possession-based team now than you was under Conte? Or give us some insight on that.
Yeah, I think there's significantly more constant control over a game. Conte didn't really care if you had the ball all the time, as long as the ends justified the means. So the primary difference does stem through Lukaku. So, and he's a player who plays on the shoulder of the defender and can run through. They've replaced him with Dzeko, who isn't really good. He's not going to do that. So that's the main difference. Conte had very, very.
Is that on my side? Just a bit of Wi-Fi problems.
Yeah.
Let's see if he comes back. Give him a second or two. But Alex, you spotted that as well, about in terms of their more possession-based team now. That kind of makes me think that our eyes may light up by hearing that, because at the pace of Serie A in terms of possession-based teams, and with our intensity and our pressing, that could be fraught with danger for Inter, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll stop it if Ewan gets to come back and probably
Sorry,
answer that. But
maybe Ewan's back. I think we've got you back.
I am back. I can't promise how long it'll work, but we'll see.
No problem.
I'm having a bit of a nightmare on this end.
No problem.
What was I saying? So Lukaku, it would tend to end up that the pattern of pass.
It's gone. I think he's gone again.
I think what you would have said was like, I think under Conte, what you were saying where it is, Lukaku, different type of striker, so you could play a bit more direct. I think into a Dzeko, they have to take a bit more time on the ball and work it into areas. I think what Evan actually pointed out was a really good point, is this team don't dribble too much anymore. Last year, I think they were ranking quite high for the sort of dribbles per game. Now they're mid in Serie A, but what they're top in Serie A for is passes into the penalty box, which kind of shows that they've taken their time a bit more, gaining possession more, and looking to pinpoint their way into the box. And I think what I'd add to that as well, personally, is that this is why I think they're a bit more dangerous than AC Milan, because, not to waffle on too much, but not only has this team been drilled by Conte to be in a dangerous counter-attacking side, but they've now been coached by Simone Inzaghi and to take more control of the game. So it's like they've got two player styles with them, which makes them a bit more fluid and less one-dimensional against Liverpool.
Ewan, I think I don't know if you heard that. Alex is suggesting that you guys are more. What was the word you used, Alex?
At the end, fluid. You've got
fluid.
Yeah.
Is that one way of describing sort of the difference in style from Conte to Inzaghi?
Yeah, I think that fits. Fluid in the sense of the entire team being fluid. So everyone is involved in basically every attack. That seems to be one of the major characteristics, which wasn't always the case under Conte. I mean, obviously what he was doing worked, but it tended to favour the same 4 or 5 individuals were at the heart of every attack. Whereas now, Brozovic is arguably more creative now in the midfield. Barella gets forward a hell of a lot more. He finds himself in the box a lot more. Çalhanoğlu is in there, who I think was mentioned before, as he's just a completely at heart creative footballer. And then Perisic has stepped up a level as well on the wing. He's constantly involved in attacks. Dumfries has grown into it as the season's gone on. He's always involved. Even Bastoni was mentioned before. He's becoming a more and more creative defender every time he steps forward. Even Skriniar's starting to get a tiny bit of that in his game. Not anywhere near to the level of Bastoni, but he's trying. He does seem to be developing in that way. So yeah, it just feels like everyone in the team is a threat at some point during a move.
I think you've mentioned some players there, and unfortunately for you guys, you'll have a couple of missing, won't you? Is Ewan not there anymore? We'll get back to Ewan when he comes back. Keith, from the Liverpool point of view, we've got an absolute full house in training, selection dilemmas all over the place. How you sort of looking at in terms of rotating? Are you playing your full strength team and taking absolutely no prisoners, regardless of the Premier League campaign now? That can take care of itself. We play on Sunday. Is your focus, if you're Jurgen Klopp, totally on sort of, possibly even winning the tie if you can tomorrow? Because let's without sounding arrogant, if we win the tie, if we win tomorrow's leg, it's very difficult for Inter to overturn a defeat, never mind a draw or even 1 goal deficit. So with that, bearing that in mind, would you absolutely play your strongest 11 tomorrow? Or is there any room for rotation?
It's going to be interesting because Klopp's favoured Naby Keita recently. Just for you guys' sake, the debate we talk about probably week in and week out is the Liverpool midfield. The front three picks itself, the back four seems to pick itself, plus the goalkeeper. But the midfield is probably always going to be the roll of the dice, if you will. I would be surprised if Klopp changed it, probably to cause a few Twitter fires. Henderson may start as he is the club captain, and it seems that he's not injured at the moment, which I think may ruffle a few feathers. I think the way Trent Alexander-Arnold was talking in that press conference, Liverpool are going after all 4 trophies. It's as simple as that. And I think Klopp from here on in is playing his strongest squads available to him, whoever he trusts at the time. And if anybody gets injured, then yeah, there may be rotations and one player might play if they get a knock here or there. But I think he goes full strength. I think it's just going to be interesting whether he goes for the team against Burnley or if, you look at Henderson, maybe there's a question mark on him. You look at Firmino, maybe there's a bit of a question mark on him, and maybe Keita, a question mark on him. Do you go for Luis Diaz, who can play in this tie? Do you go for Harvey Elliott and start to build? Do you go for Harvey Elliott and Thiago and start to go back to what he was building before, which was the Fabinho, Thiago 2 axes with Harvey Elliott in the 8? The team that he picks against Inter is going to be very interesting to see, because I feel like he's been rotating certain players and playing certain players due to AFCON, new signings, coming back from injury. But the more and more we get into the next couple of weeks, the more you are probably going to see what is Klopp's first 11. And, Klopp rarely changes his first 11 in most matches other than, League Cup games. So, yeah, absolute maximum, and go for the win. And the thing is, Liverpool, again, we've lost 2 games all season. And we're on I think it's like a 6th game in a row winning match. I think now would be the worst time to try and experiment or try and be clever. We have to give maximum respect to the Serie A champions, maximum respect, because one false move, one chink in the armor, and it becomes a tough night. Liverpool away, let's call a spade. We're not the greatest away under Jurgen Klopp. Brutally honest, we've had some tough ties, we've taken some tough defeats. This season, Champions League's been magical. We've won all our games, I believe. But, away from home, we've never been that great. And the last time we went away in Italy, other than Milan, I'll put Milan to the side, was against the team Napoli, and Napoli turned us over quite comfortably, I thought, that game. So there's a lot of risk involved if Klopp tries to be cute.
I like the way you extended your answer because Evan was finishing his breakfast. No doubt Evan's sort of having breakfast because it's what time in California? It's pretty early still, right? In California?
Not quite a breakfast, Grizz. More like a late lunch, I'd say.
Late
it's about
lunch.
2:30 p.m. here.
Nevertheless, munching it was. Evan, I want to speak about a couple of absentees. Like, I feel bad with you and talking about our fully fresh, fit, energized squad. Everyone's available. And then to have probably 2 of their most impressive performers in Barella and Bastoni absent. Talk to me about Barella, and are you a fan, and how much of an impact will that be?
I struggle to think of a team in world football that Barella doesn't absolutely walk straight into.
Wow.
I think he's a fantastic player. And, there's a lot of recency bias due to his, exploits for Italy at the Euros. But this is going back to that would be disrespecting his overall progression at Inter in the last 2 or 3 years. He's worked under Conte. And as we all know, being a midfielder in Conte's system is no easy job whatsoever. I think he would, fit almost any team in the world to a T, whether you're a team that.
Sorry, was he a Conte signing, guys?
Ewan, let's defer to Ewan there. I don't remember.
I'm not sure.
It's always very hard to work out when someone joined a team in Italy because they never just buy a player.
Yes.
They always loan them for 18 months or 2 years or something. So I'm fairly certain he was, but he may have been Spalletti.
Yeah, I think
just before.
Says on Wikipedia, July 2019, he joined Inter on a year-long loan with an obligation to buy for the 4-year contract. So it's one of those weird
Brilliant
ones.
source, by the way, Wikipedia. Brilliant source.
Love Wikipedia. Yeah, but I'm a huge Barella fan. Walks into almost any team in the world, and it is a huge miss for them because I think just to maybe submit my application for head of analysis again, Grizz. I know you didn't hire me the first time around. But if you could get at Liverpool in one way, and if I am telling Inzaghi one word of encouragement, it's that there's been games where Liverpool have lost control of the midfield for most of the 90 minutes this season, and those are the games that Liverpool have dropped points in. So Barella brings a certain energy, a dynamism in that area. So if you're missing your best player in that position, then you're less likely to exploit a Liverpool weakness. That being said, I have to caveat that by saying it's probably going to be Thiago and Fabinho starting in midfield tomorrow for Liverpool. And our record with them is, I think, something like 17 wins and 1 draw when they've started together. So maybe that would have been canceled out. But nevertheless, it's a huge miss. And you said the second name was Bastoni. Is that correct?
No, I'm not going to get your opinion on Bastoni because
Okay.
I think Alex, he did sort of name Bastoni as one of the players that he actually very much likes. Again, another huge loss for Inter, especially considering the likely replacement. Now, I don't know if you or Ewan will tell me it was a player that I haven't heard of before. His likely replacement.
I
Would
think
you
it
know?
might be DeMarco, I believe.
It was DiMarco who replaced him the other night against Napoli. There is still a chance Bastoni will play.
Oh,
He's not completely ruled out, but
Yeah, I was going to
it's
say
be
he's
touch and
predicted
go,
to start.
basically.
He's going to say he's
Yeah.
predicted to start by who scored.
Yeah, they've sort of, I don't know if rushed him back is fair, but they've really put everything into getting him back for this game.
and
So he might not be full whack. But
and it shows. So basically, the fact that they're doing all this and the effort they're putting in. Alex, talk to us about Bastoni then, because he obviously is a serious centre back.
Yeah, I like him because I think when you mentioned Bastoni, I guess if it's someone who's heard of sort of Italian football and him, it's certainly in my mind before I properly watched him, you sort of think old school Italian defender, sort of wise, going to be slow but street smart. And he's not really that to say. He's quite a modern defender. He's idle Sergio Ramos. And you can see that in terms of, I think, all round in his game, he's brilliant. He's very mobile, which helps him sort of cover for Perisic. I think previously he's a bit more forward on the left-hand side. I think that's more Dumfries now. I think he's the most mobile defender to have. He's kind of like the opposite of Skriniar, and he's a very good passer as well. And I also think he's decent on his right foot. I think you're going to point really any weakness in him potentially. I think he likes to go to ground quite a bit. I guess quite an energetic defender there, but I think that'll probably go out as he ages, maybe wises up a bit. But really, most of the things he does is perfect. And for such a young defender, I think, how old is he? He's only 22 years old, which is crazy. I think his come up's been brilliant. And I hope he does get to play in this game because I think it will make Inter's defense a lot better. And if Salah plays, that'll be a really, really fun matchup.
Ewan, Bastoni, if you want to add anything or minus anything from what Alex said about Bastoni, but he's like sort of so the viewers and subscribers that don't know how Inter Milan set up formation wise, give us an insight into how the formation is set up and how vital Bastoni and the two wing backs are in this formation.
So in terms of Bastoni, I think what Alex said about him being a much more modern centre back than you might think. I think the way I always quantify that is like, can you see him in the midfield? And with him, you absolutely can. You can picture him at the base of that midfield where Brozovic plays if they ever needed to do that. And I think that sort of says a lot about how he steps out of that back three. He's the one out of the three who has more of a license to get forward into that space, and it just creates new angles. And he's got a very good pass on him, particularly a really good long diagonal pass. Like better than the majority of defenders out there. He's got to be top three, arguably, of defenders who can do that. And then in terms of the wing backs, his pace as well, it gives them more license. So particularly Perisic on that other side. Perisic can cover that whole wing himself anyway because he's got endless amounts of energy and he's very fast.
Still?
But he knows.
Still, Ewan?
Yeah,
Still?
yeah.
Because it's, okay.
He
remember
surprised us
Perisic.
this year.
We remember Perisic flying down the wing for so many years. I just wanted to sort of, get to know, like, is he still that same effervescent, up and down, full of energy type player?
Yeah, there doesn't seem to really be anything missing there. He might be gone at the end of the season, which would be a big loss, but that's its own issue. But in terms of the way he gets forward, part of the reason he can do that is that he knows that on his side of that three, he's got an incredibly quick and very intelligent defender who not only can aid him with the ball because he can just be part of the passing move. He knows what he's doing. He doesn't stick out like a sore thumb when he gets involved, but he knows that he's covered. So he's a very, very important player. And part of the issue they've got, if for whatever reason he didn't end up playing, is that the depth for the three defenders it's not there. So DiMarco coming in is a talented player, but it's a drop-off. And it's not really his position either. They're sort of retraining him for that left side of the three. Really, he's a wing-back by trade. He spent 18 months on loan at Hellas Verona recently, and he became a much, much better player, and that's why they kept him on this year. He's just signed a new deal, but they actually want him to be Bastoni's backup, basically. But he's not there yet. He's not good enough for that yet. But at times they've been forced to use him like that.
And on the other wing back, Alex, on the other side, I should say, sorry, Hakimi was an absolute sensation in his time there, wasn't he? And obviously we know moved on to PSG, and so they replaced him with Dumfries, who impressed, didn't he? He impressed in the World Cup, wasn't it? Very impressive for the Dutch. Sort of like for like, would you say, in terms of mostly concentrated on the attacking side of things, mostly on the overlap, full of energy. Um, you know, interesting to see that, to hear that Ewan says that Perisic is still absolutely bombing on, and then we speak about the Trent and Mo Salah triangle, or I should say double acted with a triangle of either Henderson or possibly Elliott, even being our Liverpool strength. Our left isn't weak, is it? With Robertson and Mane potentially, is that an area that you could sort of see Liverpool attack the Dumfries, and you actually sounded out Skriniar? Does Skriniar play on the right-sided centre back?
Yes.
Ewan? Okay, and so De Vrij plays as the centre of the three, right? Is that another possible avenue Liverpool will look to exploit?
Potentially. I guess that's quite a fun matchup in terms of Dumfries. When you can watch the highlights, so you can have one look at his heat map. You can see exactly what he's about. On his heat map, he's got more touches in the opposition penalty box than his own. Yeah, which is, I think it really puts to shame, like, you know, the sort of old school thing where people see wing backs and think back five. Like, no, this isn't. Yeah, this isn't a right wing back. This is a right mid, and you can see he really bombs up and sort of overloads a back four. And he scored a couple of nice goals recently. I think one goal, I think it was against Roma, might be the Coppa Italia, where he came in right at the back post, just snuck in behind everyone, sort of classic, sort of running behind from a wing back, and nodded straight in. So yeah, on one hand, we'll have to watch out for him, because when Inter kind of form a 2-3-5 in possession, with their two centre backs and then midfielders, he's like that right side. But of course, on the other hand, which I think you mentioned well about what he was like for the Netherlands in the summer, he could. What I noticed as well about those, whenever he went forward, that did leave a big old gap down that right. And yeah, I think that's somewhere Liverpool could target. Maybe not necessarily because Dumfries isn't there, but it'd be because it's a big test for Skriniar. And that's not me shaming Skriniar as well, because I think he's still a very, very good defender. But I think for Skriniar, this is kind of what it is to Inter Milan. I think Liverpool are the biggest test they'll face this season. And if they pass it, then we'll know these players are really, truly elite. And if they don't pass it, then we'll kind of see their limits.
Absolutely. Thank you for the super chat. It's Faster Tortoise too. Brilliant name. Love big Champions League nights. Get stuck in, Red Men. And I think, Keith, you alluded to it, because that is the only way we know how to play. Get stuck in. Their midfield without Barella is likely to be Brozovic is a mainstay, isn't he? Absolute mainstay. Ewan, before I get Keith's opinion, could you possibly tell us who's be partnered with in midfield?
Instead of Barella?
Yeah, instead of Barella.
Yeah. So it'd be Brozovic will be in the middle, with Çalhanoğlu to his left, it would be. And then it's likely to be Vidal. But that is a situation that could change. So like I was saying with the defenders, where the drop-off is big, same situation in midfield. They don't, like, they've got lots of serviceable players that will do a job for you in the majority of games. But in a game like this, you don't want to be calling on any of them, really. You want your 11. And they really do have a defined first choice 11. Vidal has had patches this season where he's been actually very effective. And for a while, it was between him and Çalhanoğlu. They were sort of sharing that third spot in midfield. You know, but Barella and Brozovic are your two who don't move unless they're injured or suspended. But then the last couple of times he's played, he's not. He's just been a bit ineffectual. He's looked a bit passive, and you know it does look like he's lost a yard. You know, I think he's 35 now. You know, he's within his right to have lost a yard, but that will be something Klopp will be looking at. He'll be thinking that we've got players who can get around this guy and take him out of the game.
Keith, now that we have insight, knowledge about sort of how Inter Milan personnel-wise we're likely to set up, knowing that Brozovic is a strong player, not the quickest. Vidal is known to be a very strong player in the past, but again, as Ewan says, not the quickest, and maybe lacking in the same relentless energy that he showed, obviously, in years gone by. And then Hakan, I'm going to struggle to say his second name, so I'll call him Hakan. Very nice and comfortable for me. Again, technically supreme, but again, not the quickest. How do you approach that midfield from a Liverpool point of view, and what three that you go with then, in that, knowing that that's the midfield likely to be for Inter? How do you counter that or sort of dominate that midfield with the selection, possible selections that you have, Headache, in terms of central midfields?
For me, the number one for me, the number one criteria is to make sure that Inter have as little of the ball as possible, and that Hakan in particular does not get the opportunity to use his technical ability to catch us as we go in one of our kind of mazy pressing runs. Because that's the biggest issue, right? Is the fact that all it will take is Hakan gets that ball right when Liverpool are up, when they are pressing, when they're in, trying to attack. Then all of a sudden you're going to have situations where it can be 2v2, 3v3. We've seen it all the time. And for me, it's one of the best tactics to get around Liverpool. I go with Harvey Elliott. I think Harvey Elliott has the guile, he has the intelligence, and I think he's going to run rings. I think he has the potential to run rings around Vidal, because it's going to create. Vidal's going to have to do, and Brozovic are both going to have to do a lot of work in looking after the positions that Harvey Elliott takes. And also, I would be very, very by what you're telling me about the Dumfries. So Dumfries is on the right, and who do you say would be on the left for Inter?
Perisic.
So Perisic being on the left against Trent Alexander-Arnold on the right. Now, if you got all of a sudden you got Perisic and Vidal in a similar position, I'd be pushing Trent Alexander-Arnold through the middle like we've been doing this season. So all of a sudden, not only have you got Harvey Elliott causing issues through the middle, not only have you got obviously Thiago, Fabinho, who's feeling a little bit more confident and getting licensed to be a bit more aggressive in forward situations, but you've got that blinding run coming through with Trent to be a little bit more, a bit more narrow in certain situations. I think you completely overload that midfield and you just create chance after chance. I think I believe, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm almost certain Vidal played against us when he played for Bayern Munich.
For Barcelona, the last time.
He played against us for Barcelona, and I felt even then, he can get, he can get pressured quite quickly, and once Liverpool go, it's that chasing the shadows situation, right? Because when Liverpool turn, ultimately, when they turn into a 4 or even a 5 going forward, and you're trying to catch that up and you're trying to keep up with them, then the youthfulness and the legs are just, it can become quite overwhelming. And that's where Barella, in my opinion, is missing the most, is because not only does Barella have the legs, but Barella has the technical ability to look after the ball. And looking after the ball in modern football, especially from the midfield, is paramount in these situations, because it just gives you a time to breathe. It gives the other guys around you the chance to get into positions, to get comfortable and to feel your surroundings. No one in that middle is going to be looking after the ball as well as Barella. Then you're going to get a situation where Liverpool are going to win that ball far more often. And when on our side, when you've got someone like Thiago who can literally look after the ball and do the owl when he's doing the look left, the look right, and he doesn't even have to look at the pass; he just passes it. He can do it with his eyes closed. That's where I think we're going to have a lot of success, and that's the 3 I would go with. Honestly, that's the 3 for me. That is the 3 that I believe in the most. I feel it has the best balance. And the most important thing is that all 3 of those players, even if Inter decide that actually we're going to go up the pitch by 10 meters and we're going to try and get the ball off them further in their half, they're so good at like working in those tight spaces. And once they get out of that tight space, and then you've got Salah, Mane, Diaz, Jota going off on their own.
I'm sure not all 4. I'm not sure all 4 will be playing tomorrow, but yeah,
well, I think Klopp played all 5 against Cardiff.
I think you're trying to intimidate you, and a bit too much there by naming every single attacker we have in our squad.
We played 13 players.
but Ivan, I've lost blue chips. He says, good point, Keith. Pace is all important, but at Anfield, it's all about patience tomorrow. So Avi has sort of envisages a match completely different from how Keith's described how we're setting out to play. How do you see it panning out now? So we have a rough idea of the lineups that possibly will be employed by both coaches tomorrow now. Obviously, we're coming to the front men. They play a back three. We have a great history of turning into savages against back threes, three centre backs. Their back three, from what Alex and Ewan is telling us, are very physical centre backs, but they're not the most mobile, barring Bastoni, who's 50-50. Again, knowing that sort of description of their centre backs and their strengths and weaknesses, which 3 out of our 5 possible starters would you sort of employ tomorrow?
I think given that Diaz didn't see the pitch at Turf Moor and Jota was a late sub, I would envision that it's Diaz on the left, Jota through the middle, and Salah on the right, of course. I think this game actually might mirror what we're kind of used to as Liverpool fans. I think Inter are going to plug up the middle, maybe make up for a lack of athleticism in the middle that they're missing with Barella, just by plugging it up and congesting space and forcing Liverpool to go around. And Liverpool have been pretty successful at going around, as we've known from watching the Premier League and Champions League over the years. And even with their 3 physically imposing center backs, I think it will be a bit of a siege mentality. I've seen Jota outjump other center backs that are physically his superior. And I think given how much time I think we will spend camped in their half, we will reap the benefits of a guy like Jota who can make a goal out of a half a yard in the box on either foot. So I really back Jota to do what it needs to be done there. And I can see a game where he is not involved much in terms of the build-up or anything like that. None of the Firmino role stuff tomorrow I don't think we'll see, just because I don't think he'll have the space to do it. But I think he'll be the target for most of the crosses. I think he'll be trying to play the odd bounce or the odd ricochet like he does so well. And I think he'll be absolutely crucial. And of course, the magnetic energy of Salah, just draws players into him. We've seen so many times Salah picks up the ball on the right wing, brings 2 or 3 defenders with him. And then for the first time all half, Henderson, Elliott, whoever's in that right central midfield role is free on top of the box for the first time. So I think we'll see a bit of that tomorrow, though. Inter, Inzaghi, they seem to be a very tactically astute team, so they'll have done their homework, and we'll try to limit that.
Alex, Evan thinks Luis Diaz will start tomorrow. What do you make of his start? Brief cameo appearances started off with a cameo appearance and then started off the game against guys. Who was the game?
Leicester?
Leicester. Mm-hmm. What do you make of him so far? And is it sort of how you envisaged him sort of seamlessly fit into sort of the Klopp attack type thing? Is he that kind of player that you knew would be an instant success in terms of how he plays, the profile of player? Has he surprised you, or are we yet to see the best of him?
He surprised me in terms of how seamlessly he's slotted into Klopp's system. I think when I was on, at the beginning of this month, I was kind of thinking this guy.
We spoke about him, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah. I think I said something along the lines of, I think he could get up to the Premier League standard fairly quickly, but I thought it'd take him a bit longer to adapt to Liverpool's system. But I knew it was Leicester because I knew I'd seen him. I was thinking, what game was it? And Leicester game is where I watched him. I was thinking, he just seemed to link so well with the players, and not necessarily that as well, just also making the right sort of runs that I kind of expect from Liverpool. So I guess I wouldn't be too surprised if he starts in this game. I mean, I must say as well, but I'd love to see Harvey Elliott start because I think he's awesome. I'm very good with the Liverpool fans as well. I tweeted the other day, I think Liverpool probably I'm not a fan of any team, but this is the team I'm probably enjoying
if you
the
was
most
to
watch.
If you was to support a team,
No.
Okay, I thought we're nearly there.
Almost. But this is the team I'm enjoying the most to watch in Europe at the moment. They're awesome in attack.
Talking about attack, As we have been, Ewan, coming to your attack, and then sort of, I guess, sort of since the departure of Lukaku, how has Inzaghi revamped this attack and sort of personnel wise and stylistically as well? So obviously, you touched upon how Lukaku was, playing on the last man, had the physical ability to run past the last man. You now have Dzeko, who I want to say has been one of my most underrated strikers, stroke attackers in Europe. Like how this guy is not talked about more is scandalous. The guy is fantastic. Absolutely massive fan of Ergin Dzeko. And then you've still got Sanchez, but the key man for me possibly could be Lautaro Martinez. Now we know it was a magnificent double act with Lukaku. Lukaku gets his move away. Martinez sort of probably, I don't know, you'll tell us more, probably stays for another summer, like in terms of he possibly will go this summer if there's enough bids. How did he take to that? And sort of how has he sort of developed this partnership with Dzeko now? And sometimes Sanchez maybe?
So Lautaro is a very odd player. It's a very odd situation he's in it. So ever since he's joined, he's constantly been linked away, almost regardless of his form. So in the summer, it looked throughout the whole summer he was linked with Atleti and Barca particularly. They were both supposedly going to whack the money down on the table, and it never quite happened. It looked like he was the second big player who was going to go to balance the books, and then suddenly Chelsea turned up with the money and Lukaku was gone. So then Lautaro signed a new deal quite early this season, and it's a big one as well. It's a stay for the long haul sort of deal, but and they've got rid of his release clause. They've made it a sky's the limit sort of thing. But what's quite interesting about it is that he's been going on. He's had two quite barren runs now during the season. So I think overall he's on maybe 12 or 13 goals. I think at the moment. So respectable, but not amazing. And he's not scored in the league for like around a month, I believe. So he does go on these spells of disappearing a bit, and it's kind of been reported that the club they're not shopping him around by any means whatsoever, but they know full well with this new contract, and they know there are clubs who want to buy him and would pay a lot of money. If somebody rocked up in the summer and said, we'll give you 90 million for him, they'd do it, and they'd be very happy about the situation. It wouldn't be a case of, oh no, we desperately don't want to lose him. I think they would value that money more and think that they can replace him effectively in a much, much cheaper manner. In terms of how he plays with Dzeko, I wouldn't say they've got anywhere near the relationship that he had with Lukaku, but there is one there. But Dzeko has changed the way the whole team play. So he's he knits the play together with the midfield, whereas you don't get that from Lukaku. That's not his game. So Dzeko
as we've seen at Chelsea.
Yeah. Lukaku does the last bit, and he does it really well, but Dzeko does all of it, and that has brought the wide players into it slightly more as well, in the sense that he is so lethal in the box that he can get his head on anything, but he's so adept at volleying from close range. That's what's so incredible. He gets on the end of crosses where you just can't see how he's going to get there. He can have three defenders around him, and he'll manage to volley it in the top corner, and you can't quite work out how he's done it. He's just got this way of moving his body. His nickname is the Swan, basically. That's his whole thing on social media. It's swan emojis all the time whenever he scores. And, that comes from the way he's so graceful, and he gets on the end of things. He's got these long legs that seem to just find their way to the ball. How he'll fare in that sense against a player like Van Dijk, he's probably not faced a defender of that caliber, barring people like, the best defenders he's probably faced this season would be people like Koulibaly,
Bonucci.
Bonucci, Chiellini, De Ligt, and maybe a couple of others that I'm forgetting. But if I'm convinced he scores in this tie, I just think he's a good enough player that he will have service, and he will take chances that fall to him.
Well, very much like how we spoke about Vidal's last experience against Liverpool not being brilliant. Dzeko, if we remember rightly, guys, against Roma in the Stadio Olimpico, terrorized us in that second leg, didn't they? Nearly pulled off a miraculous comeback. A big fan, Evan, of Dzeko, a big fan of Lautaro, and somewhat of a forgotten man of the Premier League, Alexis Sanchez. I'm assuming Evan, Ewan, only 2 of the 3 will play.
Yeah,
Probably-
it'll be Lautaro and Dzeko, it sounds like.
Thoughts on that strike force then, Evan?
I'm a huge fan. I think if you're making a list of the most underrated players of the 21st century, I think Edin Dzeko goes pretty high on that list.
I'm with you, brother.
Just in terms of being underrated. I'm a huge fan of Lautaro Martinez. I think he could fit into almost.
That's where
any
we
anta-
differ a little bit. I'm not so much of a huge fan of Lautaro. I know you are, but we'll clash heads again another time about that. Yeah.
I think you might be right, Grizz, because Jurgen Klopp famously passed on a 17-year-old Lautaro Martinez. So maybe you guys, the 2 of you, see something that I don't. So I'm a huge fan of Dzeko though, and I'm a huge fan of Martinez just for different reasons. You bring up Dzeko at Roma; he actually scored at Anfield. You guys remember we conceded 2 late goals, a penalty that Patrick Schick scored, and Dzeko capitalized on a Dejan Lovren error, stuck it in the top corner. He's the type of guy where even if your team is getting absolutely cooked on the night, he just needs one chance. And I think the numbers for Inter back that up. Although they're, in terms of the goals they've scored in the Champions League, I think it's just 8. That puts them in the lower tier of the round of 16 teams. Their XG in the competition is top 5. So the quality of chances that they create, if not scoring the most goals, is right up there. So they're a team I will fear, even if we look 100% comfortable, Grizz, just because they have the quality of Dzeko and the never-ending energy that is Lautaro Martinez.
Alex, I wanted to come back to you with some of those points Evan made, because there always will be a threat, in my opinion, because of the technical ability of Hakan to deliver a ball on a sixpence. And I guess the 3 huge centre-backs add Dzeko to the mix. And as you pointed out, they are one of the most potent teams in terms of set pieces. That's an absolute avenue, I would say. I mean, Evan, I hired Evan as an analysis for Inter. He flopped. I took on the role myself, and I've come back with this.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about Çalhanoğlu. I don't think he's actually scored a free kick this season, at least in the league. Or at least he's not scored more than 1. And everyone, I think, if anyone was trying to slander him, they'd say, "Oh, it's just a free kick merchant. That's all he does. He's on dead balls or whatever." But it really is his crossing that's exceptional. I kind of sort of hinted it earlier. Like, when you watch it, I feel like when you watch free kick takers, they either do 1 or 2 things really well. Either like power it really well, or they loft it really nicely. Çalhanoğlu, he does it where he's like powering these crosses in really high, almost like magic. It just sort of drops straight down. And
Can I suggest someone who reminds me, or who reminds me of Juninho, the Leon Juninho, in terms of technical ability? Is that a good comparison, people?
I felt like one coming, to be fair. I can't say I've watched much of Juninho, but
of
the
course, sorry,
highlights
sorry.
The highlights I've seen.
I'm showing my age, maybe. Sorry, yeah. And again, it's one of those that I don't know how to pronounce his surname. I don't know, Ewan, maybe you can fill us in with a surname, or Keith, or anyone else.
Is it Pernambucaro?
I wouldn't know.
Pernambucaro.
I wouldn't know, but that's the one.
Yeah, it was that one. Yeah, I remember. I remember him too, Chris. Don't worry.
Magnificent free kick taker.
Incredible.
So yeah, look, threats from set pieces, and as you said, Alex, we're equally as dangerous and potent from set pieces as well. So this game, even though we've discussed the intricacies of the midfields and the pressing and everything, it could actually be settled by set pieces from either side. So always makes it intriguing. Keith, I want to finish off by sort of going through the team predictions and sort of the score predictions. I know you near enough have just said your team, but let's confirm your lineup, your predicted lineup for tomorrow.
Sorry, before I do, I just got another name drop real quick. Edin Dzeko, his wife, went to all the baby classes and postnatal classes with my cousin's wife as well. So when she was living in Rome. So
Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
I've got links, if you want tickets now. But yeah, no, look, in terms of my team, Alisson in goal. I think it's going to be Trent, Virgil, Matip, Robertson.
No Konate. Can I tempt you with Konate in terms of the way Konate dealt with Zlatan?
Yeah, it's a great shout. Honestly, it is. I think Klopp has come into a situation at the moment, and it's not necessarily almost who's the better defender. It's actually who's the better playmaker between Joel Matip and Konate. And I just don't think you get the playmaking abilities to break down football teams at the highest level with Konate the same way you do with Joel Matip. That's why I think Klopp persists with Joel Matip regardless. And I think he'll favour what Joel can do on the ball over what Konate can do against Dzeko. And then the midfield three. Now the midfield three, what I want is it to be Thiago, Fabinho, and Elliott, and I want us to go on a run with that midfield three. What I think it will be Fabinho, Thiago, and Henderson. And I think it will be Mane, Jota, and Salah.
And a scoreline prediction. I know you're not going to be shy, even though we have Inter Milan fan on the show. I know you won't be shy. A score prediction?
Yeah, 3-1. I agree with you that Dzeko will score 100% because he always does against Liverpool, but I reckon it's 3-1 game. And I think Diogo does similar to what he did to Atalanta. I think Diogo's going to have some fun tomorrow night, so I'm giving him the 2 goals. And hopefully Mo Salah can break his mini duck that he's currently in at the moment, because I don't think he scored for Liverpool in the last.
Sell him, flog him, sell him.
Contracts on the line. He needs to get them M's up.
Absolutely. Have you got any differences to that, Ivan?
I know for the sake of entertainment, it's never it's never wise to maybe just agree with everything the person that spoke before you just said. But I'm struggling to see where I differ here. But I'm going to make an effort. I think Keith makes a great point about the center backs. Kind of backs up what I said. I think we're going to be camped in their half for most of the game. And obviously in those situations, you want Joel Matip. And also because Inter are not necessarily an isolation winger type team, it enforces choosing Matip over Konate there, because let's assume hypothetically they had a Zaha, where if he beats Trent, maybe you want the physicality of Konate coming to sweep that situation up. So yeah, I think Matip makes sense for all those reasons. In midfield, as much as I want to see Harvey Elliott play, I don't see Klopp straying away from his captain in a game of this magnitude. I think it will be Thiago, Fabinho, and Henderson on the right side of midfield. I do differ from Keith in the sense that I think Diaz will start tomorrow on the left wing. Listen, Diaz, although people take time to, bet into this Liverpool team at all ages, this is a guy who has Champions League experience. He's played against teams of the ilk of Inter. He's 25 years old, so hardly a kid. So I think he will play tomorrow. Jota through the middle, Salah on the right. I think it'll be 2-0 tomorrow to Liverpool, but I think the goals will be hard fought and scrappy. Goals similar to the one we scored at Burnley, where it might come from a set piece or a cross that hits a few knees, bounces off a shin, and falls to Salah 6 yards out. It'll be goals kind of like that. And
they're the best goals. They're the best goals.
Oh, the best goals. And you take a tap in these circumstances, as a famous commentator once said. And I do agree that Dzeko will score, but I think it'll be at Anfield, because he's good at scoring at Anfield. And it'll get our blood flowing. It'll make the second leg exciting for the neutral viewer. So there you go.
Ewan, give us your predicted lineup in terms of what the media are saying and what you've heard and what you think will end up with a likely lineup, and give us your prediction on how the game will go.
So the Inter lineup's a lot easier to predict because there's, like I said, I think he's just got a much more definitive 11. I think Klopp's got more options available, but it'll be Handanovic in net, and then you'll have. I'm going to say Bastoni starting. It does seem very likely he will be. So it'll be him, De Vrij and Skriniar. Dumfries and Lautaro as your wing backs, and then you'll have
Dumfries and
Calhanoglu.
Perisic. Dumfries and Perisic.
Sorry,
you
yes,
mean?
yes. did I say Lautaro?
Yeah, you said
Dumfries
Lautaro.
and
I got
Perisic.
excited. I thought, hey, we might have to
Yeah, I got
play
ahead of
those
myself.
4 attackers like Keith said.
That'd be something if
Yeah.
you just whacked him at wing back, wouldn't
Do you know what I mean?
it? Yeah, and then your midfield will be Calhanoglu, Brozovic, and it does seem like it'll be Vidal, and obviously Dzeko and Lautaro up front. In terms of the score, I can't stand predictions because, as we all know, football is a stupid game, and no matter what you think and what is logical, that is not necessarily what's going to happen. But I'm gonna go for 1-1 tomorrow night. Liverpool will go through, but 1-1 tomorrow night, I reckon.
I think we would probably take that. I mean, Keith won't. Keith will demand an absolute win, and at least by 2-3. But you know, I'm not so convinced that we will sort of romp through. But Alex, the neutralize us.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a 1-0 Liverpool win at first. I think it's quite a little annoying, the Champions League games, in terms of, I think, with Inter and Napoli against Barcelona. Italian teams, I feel like they, if anything, want to get out of this, really, because they want to focus on the league. I think Inter want to retain the league, and when your national newspaper said it's going to be nearly impossible to beat Liverpool, and you've got Barella out, and a player we haven't even mentioned, Joaquin Correa, who I think is excellent, great impact player. When he's out as well, I think Inter they'll grind this through. They'll lose 1-0, and if a miracle happens, then we'll see what happens at Anfield. But I think after they lose this 1-0, they'll get thumped at Anfield like 3-0, and Liverpool will go through. It's a weird side note. This could end up being less competitive than Chelsea-Lille, because Lille have got nothing to play for, and I reckon it's a side prediction. I reckon Lille are going to cause potentially a shock of the Champions League.
Wow.
Wow.
I'd be so over the moon. I'd make you an honorary member of my channel. Honest to God, I would love you to bits if that ever came true, because I think everyone knows I have no love lost for Chelsea Football Club, but that's another topic and agenda for another show. But guys, we must call it a night. There's been a wonderful, wonderful chat with you guys. Really, really appreciate your time. Of course, Red Fellas, Keith and Evan, we catch up. Ewan, really appreciate your time, my friend. Tell the viewers and subscribers where they can find you and some more pearls of wisdom, more of your pearls of wisdom.
Well, Twitter's just at Burns_Ewan. So if you want to see me tweet about random players in Italy that people may not have heard of, but then you can hear of them and wonder who the hell that is. And then, just all the news on Sempre Inter all the time. In between the legs, you can see all the team news and general club news as well.
Excellent. And again, hope to get you on again, hopefully, and we speak about all things Italian. Really appreciate your time. And Alex, of course, thank you very much. Where can the people find you?
You can find me on Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, or Instagram at EuroExpert. And please come to these channels at the moment, because I'm uploading dedicated animated videos of every European team playing, an important tie. So tomorrow you're going to get a dedicated 6-second animated video of Inter. You'll get another one coming up of Napoli, of Barcelona, Dortmund for Rangers. And next week you'll get the ones for Lille v Chelsea. Find out why. I think that's going to be a tough game. Atletico for United. Put a lot of effort into these. People are really liking them up. So if you want a bit more of that, go to those platforms.
Amazing stuff. The content never stops with Alex. His new name, EuroExpert, aka the Neutralizer. But
I love it.
We nearly had him there. Guys, did you notice there was one part of the show where he was swaying towards Liverpool? He was like, wow, I really enjoy Liverpool. And we nearly had him, but then, we'll get him sometime. But guys, this has been the pre-match hype show for Inter Milan versus Liverpool. We'll catch you on the post-match tomorrow. I don't believe Keith or Evan are with me tomorrow. No problem. It's okay. It's not a problem. I won't miss you. Hope to catch you in the post-match. Hopefully, it's a positive post-match tomorrow, and we continue this. What possibly could be what possibly could be an amazing season for Liverpool Football Club. Take care. Hope to see you tomorrow, guys. Thank you.